Good morning, everyone. How we doing? So good morning, everyone. How we doing? It is now 9 o'clock. Got all these latecomers in the waiting room. So everybody got their camera on? The New Win sisters? Broke, you got a camera today? Ooh. So we awake? It's Friday. Woohoo! Yay! So any big plans before the governor shuts the state down again? No?
I already went and stocked up on alcohol yesterday.
That's always a good thing. Of course, so I'm never out of alcohol, so I'm always stuck. My son texted me this morning. We're supposed to go to San Luis Obispo for Thanksgiving to his house. And he texted me, he goes, you guys better be quarantining yourself for the next 2 weeks before you come up here. So I told him Hawaii didn't have that anymore, so maybe I'll just go to Hawaii for Thanksgiving instead. He didn't like
It's not a bad alternative.
He doesn't like my sense of humor sometimes. All right. So we got a lot of material to cover today so we can catch up. So next week we'll be on track. Let's see here. So there was no school on Veterans Day. I did have meetings though. We're going to go over chapter 7 and 8, strategy and vertical alliances. And then I'll do some adjustments over this weekend to the midterms and give you what the medium score and all that other good stuff, all the great statistics on that. For the most part, everybody did pretty good. Only a few people didn't, and I gave them an opportunity to do a little bit better. So, questions about anything so far before we get started? I do have some times available Monday, Earl, so yes, you guys can meet with me. Just send me an email. I will confirm Monday the 16th, 10:45. It looks like I have available. So send that to me as an email confirming that your group's okay with that time. And then I have 4 meetings after class today with other groups. You know who you are.
Yeah, Professor, I had a question about that.
Sure, yeah.
So are you going to send us the Zoom link, or do we just join like your office hour link, or how does that work?
Coming back into this link, I'm just
Okay.
going to exit the meeting for everybody, and then I'll allow groups to come back in. So if you're scheduled for 10 o'clock, you can come back right in after we finish class, and they'll go from there. Okay, and then I'll just allow you to enter into from the waiting room into the meeting. So unless you need a link, I can actually email you. But if you made the class meeting, you should be able to make the group meeting. It's the same thing. Okay, any other questions? No? Are you awake, Maria? Okay, barely. All right, good deal. All right. Alicia, you got your hoodie on. Andre, you got your hoodie on. All right, let's get your cameras on. Look, another value chain. Just can't get enough of those. All right. So we're into week 6, a little bit more than halfway through the quarter. This week we're going to talk about chapter 7 and 8. Actually, today we're going to try and get through both chapters. So pay attention. It's going to move quickly. I'm going to talk a little bit more about the final group project, Cascade Ceramics Company. Ceramic options. There's you guys. I know you guys are all doing different types of. Dennis, anybody trickles in, can you please let them in?
Yeah.
Thanks. All right. So you guys are all looking at your options and what to do. Some of the few things that there are: brick ceramics for pizza ovens, screws, bolts, nuts, knives, tubes, dental, toilets, sinks, bathroom fixtures. So there's a lot of different projects out there for you guys to take on. But the key to that is doing a little bit of research, seeing which projects are going to work out for your groups. Each group has scheduled a mandatory Zoom meeting with me. Everybody's scheduled a meeting, so we're all good on that. So I don't have to talk to anybody about that. Some of you, like girls group, is going to schedule a second meeting. Their first meeting they scheduled, it was early. They didn't quite decide on what project they wanted to do yet or what product. So they're going to have another meeting. So deliverables, 75 minimum pages, not including title page, executive summary, table of contents, and references. I will be giving some extra information about executive summary. That's one of the most important parts of your paper. Okay, so the paper is written for the president of CCC in consulting format. I'm going to be the president. So don't treat me as a professor. Treat me as a business owner, which I also am a business owner. And your executive summary is going to be the most important thing I read, because I'm going to decide from your executive summary whether I should throw this in the trash can or continue reading or give it to one of my executives to finish reading. That's what, in real life, that's what would really happen. Okay, so it's going to be single space, Times New Roman, font size. You guys should all be accustomed to that. You've been writing all your papers in that. Title page with all students' name in alphabetical order. Table of contents with dots to the page numbers. Executive summary with charts, tables, and business format. Okay, if you have any questions about that, you can ask me about it in your group. So this is a real life example. GE is cutting up to 13,000 jobs at its jet engine division because of the pandemic. Ceramic blades are the main component in jet engines. GE is using the pandemic to cut 25, it's going to actually end up being over 50% of their job force in the industry. So most companies will use this as an excuse to cut 25, even more of job force as dead weight due to restructuring the company, and they can actually hire back cheaper labor. So those jobs out there, they're going to get a lot cheaper. They're not going to be paying as much as they were before. Okay, back to the project. The CC has hired you as a consultant team to help them with their problem. Your immediate assignment is to figure out how to increase revenue with the next 12 months. Your second goal is to create a sustainable midterm solution. It can be the same thing. It can be something different. And then finally, you're going to do a long range, which is something that can be the same product or a different product. Okay, so remember 75 pages of content. That doesn't include your title pages or any references or anything. So make sure to include all the great stuff you learned in this class and describe your steps your team followed to undertake and complete analysis of the case. All right, so that is your group project in a nutshell. I will take any questions you might have real quick about that. Otherwise, save them for your group meetings. Any questions? No. All right, so Dell started out with a big old cow on, no, that was Gateway. Was that Gateway or Dell? I can't remember. Well, Dell, they talked a little bit about Dell in your book, and they talked about what is vertical integration. There's three types of there's outsourcing, the process where a firm contracts out of a business process or activity an external supplier. So your book uses the oil industry, and we'll go over a little bit more about that. Vertical integration or insourcing brings business processes or activities previously conducted by outside companies in-house. What Apple is currently doing now, they've been talking about doing it for several years. They got down to one major chip that they were buying from, Intel, and now they decided to make their own chip. Okay, and then the value chain, which we spoke about quite extensively, the sequence of all activities that are performed by a firm to turn raw materials into the finished products that is sold to a buyer. So for example, in the oil industry, which your book uses, exploring for crude oil is what a value chain, they go back into the value chain to do that. Drilling for crude oil, shipping crude oil, refining crude oil, shipping refined products, and selling refined products to final customers. Many oil companies in the beginning started out just drilling oil and refining it and then selling it to somebody else. Now, companies like Shell, Chevron do everything from oil exploration to selling you a Twinkie in their store. Okay, so they do the whole chain now. Okay, so we talked a little bit about forward and backward integration before. This is kind of a review. So like I just said, the oil companies does everything from exploring to oil to having gas stations set up to sell the oil. So that's the refining, the exploration, the refining, the distribution, everything from the CRM to the marketing and planning to selling a cup of coffee in the morning when you go to fill up your car with gas. Okay, so this is kind of a little bit of a chart of what it looks like from the upstream all the way down to the downstream. And oil is made into several different products. It's made into chemicals, plastic, fuels, lubricants, and even natural gas is a byproduct, and diesel is a byproduct of refining petroleum. Okay, oil industry value chain, can't get enough of this model, right? Learn it, love it. All right. So there's 3 reasons for vertical integration. The first reason is capabilities, conduct the activity internally when the firm has or can develop better capabilities to perform it better than others. So a lot of companies find that, like Apple is finding that making the chip for their computers is going to give them an advantage. Coordination, conduct the activity internally when effective coordination and tight integration of the activity with other firm activities provides product performance. Differentiation advantages, for example, Toyota does has a lot of their hands into the companies that supply them the parts, so they are actually part of those companies and having them making and coordinating the products with them. And then control, obviously, conduct the activity internally to control scarce inputs. For example, Alcoa for the aluminum, the bauxite that is needed to make that, they can control that. Otherwise, they have to depend on a different company to give them that product. Okay, the oil refinery is another example of that. So capabilities, which refer to the question of whether the firm can build the capability to perform the activity better than other firms. For example, Nike designs and markets its own shoes, but outsources the manufacturing the shoes to other companies. So Nike is not known as a shoe manufacturer. They're known as a firm that makes tennis shoes, that sells them and markets them. Okay, Nike understands the low-cost manufacturing capabilities are very different from design and marketing capabilities. So they understand that manufacturing is not their forte, but marketing is. So they let other companies make their shoes to their specifications. Okay, capabilities. Nike creates barriers to imitation to prevent subcontracting of its shoes from becoming competitors. So, certain things like the Michael Jordan shoes. Okay, not some small company in Sri Lanka or China can actually sign a contract with Michael Jordan to put his name on the shoes, but Nike can, and that's how they keep the subcontractors from taking over. There's obviously a lot of different other things that they do. So that's just one of them. So let's go on. Coordination, which refers to the question of whether a firm is better able to effectively coordinate the activity with the activities in the firm when both are conducted internally. So if you're doing both things, if you're doing many things internally, it's easier to coordinate them as opposed to coordinating with somebody in Florida who just got hit by a hurricane and they had to shut down their plant, so they can't ship you your product. So, but if you're internally, you have these things either in a warehouse where they're easily accessible or you're manufacturing as you need them. Obviously, you can coordinate a lot easier that way. So to what extent will we improve our ability to coordinate our business activities, offer unique value by conducting this activity ourselves? And that's what Apple is looking into right now. So Apple will be doing that. I don't know if you guys heard about the announcement, but they made it just a few days ago. The greater the independence between activities, the more it makes sense to vertically integrate, have those done within a company where the team members can effectively coordinate their work So making a motherboard and putting it into your computer is obviously something you want to have full control of. Apple was going out to 3 different companies to do that before. So now, and plus they didn't have any security of what they did with all the information. So all the innovations that Apple is doing, they really don't have security over that when you give all that information out to somebody who's manufacturing for you. Okay, so Apple uses Motorola, Intel, and AMD. They got down to the point to where they were just using Intel, and now they're going to do everything internally. So now Apple executives decided they could do better coordinating products development activities if Apple design and manufactures its own chip. They believe doing so, even if they don't have better chip development capabilities, would lower coordination costs and enhance the speed of the new product and development. But knowing Apple, they will most likely come out ahead. Okay, so designing their own chips would make it more difficult for competitors to imitate. So, like I said, keeping their trade secrets secret and their processes will be better in-house. So now they're really going to be secretive about everything. Okay, so modular independence. Automakers use standardized nuts and bolts to assemble cars, and those nuts and bolts are less than a penny each. So storing a few thousand of them or even 100,000 of them is not going to put the car manufacturing companies out of business. So they have those ready to go. So there's no need for them to make their bolts. So they can stock them in quantities and that they need, and even overstock them. Okay, so sequential independence, when a firm cannot perform its own task until another firm has completed its task, cannot create their air conditioning systems. For example, Toyota does this with a company that they own quite a bit of stock in and have quite a bit of vested interest. They have to coordinate how they do their making their air conditioning units, getting them to them and putting them in there, and making sure the geometric space is allocated when they do the designs. Okay, so there's a little bit more involved in that. Reciprocal independence. Some activities or tasks require a high degree of coordination because tasks are reciprocally interdependent. So good performance achieves through simultaneous and repetitive processes. Each individual must work in close coordination with other teams. So when they're making the engines in cars, obviously they want to be able to do that because each engine is a little bit different for each car. All you car enthusiasts know this, you know, the difference between the Camaro, the GTs, and all that other good stuff. Okay, engines also are influenced by transmission systems and everything else. So they have to coordinate that. So making that in-house makes more sense than making the nuts and bolts in-house, right? Okay. So modular or pooled independencies. So this is kind of a chart that your book has. This means the results are pulled together, but the individual activities can be conducted without coordinating with other activities. So we go from low, so the nuts and bolts, to high, the engines. Okay. All right. So control, which refers to a firm's desire to maintain control over a valuable activity or input to the value in the value chain, which we gave you an example of the oil companies, everything from exploration all the way to selling their oil. So organizational leaders must, to what extent should we maintain control over a crucial step in the value chain by conducting these activities? Vertical integration in order to control some scarce and valuable resources. Like I said, the example that your book gives you is the oil industry. Okay, crude oil is best shipped to an oil refinery through a pipeline. And then we're going to get into some costs and what it is, if it's cheaper to actually make something for your company or actually outsource it. So the barrel of oil, so meaning it is specialized to participate transaction, transporting oil to the refinery. It has value when redeployed to its next best uses. For example, an oil pipeline is made for moving oil, nothing else. It's not made for moving water, Diet Coke. It's not made for anything other than oil. So once you build that, you can't really use it for anything else. So you have to control that asset, and that is a transaction-specific asset. Okay, bowling alley is very similar to that. Once you build a bowling alley, in order to make that space into something else, it's going to take a lot of resources. Okay, so making versus buying. A lot of times when the company needs to look at something about making it, it may be cheaper by a few pennies, but that doesn't mean that you would do it, because you have to consider all the things, quality, differentiation, and other considerations. For example, if you guys ever after school you're in a job and you're asked to say, your boss says, "Hey, what do you think about us manufacturing this particular product?" Well, if you can't save 25% by doing it, it's not going to be worth it. And that's kind of a rule of thumb. Obviously, there are exceptions to that type of thing. But if the switching costs are going to be more than 25% to do something, it's usually not worth it because of all the other things you have to consider. Okay, questions about that? No? Okay. Dangers of vertical integration, loss of flexibility. When many activities are merged into the value chain, the flexibility to quickly make changes to the business is lost. So once you set a lot of things into motion, you can't just stop it like an assembly line on a car manufacturing. If something happens, it just can't press a stop button. You're going to mess up a whole lot of stuff. This is important, especially when there are major technology manufacturing changes. Nike chooses to outsource the production of the shoes because of the ability to switch suppliers, depending on which supplier has the lowest cost at the moment. Okay, we spoke about that. So loss of focus refers to the fact that more different types of activities a firm needs to manage, the harder it is to the world-class all of the activities. So for example, General Motors made 70% of its parts internally, as opposed to Toyota, which made only 25% of its parts. But Toyota has a vested interest in almost 100% of all the companies that do make stuff for them. Okay, so that's where they're different in the value chain, where Toyota goes both forwards and backwards in the value chain to make sure that everybody is doing what they're supposed to be doing. In General Motors, they run their divisions or their different plants as a separate company. So sometimes it's like buying from a different company. Okay, so the coordination is not always there, so that can be a danger. Because of GM's lack of focus, suppliers are able to have lower costs by focusing on a narrow product line and producing those products in large scale for multiple automakers. So for example, the nuts and bolts, if General Motors was making the nuts and bolts for their cars, there's other companies out there that do nothing but make nuts and bolts, and they become very good at it and become less expensive at making it. So General Motors is paying $1 for a nut to make a nut and bolt that would have cost them 25 cents. So you multiply that over millions of times, that's quite a bit of difference in money. Okay, so some of the dangers of outsourcing. You lose control of power, may give an outside supplier undue power over control of its outsourced activities, and is a critical to success. So for example, say the cost, you're buying a bunch of ceramic nuts and bolts from a company to put into your ceramic brakes. So that company says, hey, the cost of ceramics went up by 500%. You have no choice but to pay 500% more for your nuts and bolts. Okay, so that's how you lose control of your pricing and everything. So suddenly, your ceramic brakes, which cost you $100, now cost you $200. Okay, loss of capabilities may set in motion the loss of capabilities that may be important for the future and create a future competitor. So for example, that company that sells ceramic nuts and bolts to you for your ceramic brakes may say, hey, you know what, we're making these and we're doing a great job at it. Let's sell them to everybody. Okay, and then they're going to tell you, well, we sold out this month. You're going to have to wait for your allocation. We don't have any nuts and bolts for you. Sorry. So that would be an example of that. And then if you give a company intellectual properties, they may sell that, they may duplicate it and copy it. Like the example I said in China and India and some of these other companies where the laws are not the same as here in the United States, they take that product and put a different label on it. And even though it's the same exact Jordache jeans or the Levi jeans, they put a different label on it and suddenly it's a generic jean and it's showing up at Costco. Okay, so it looks just like a Levi, fits like a Levi, but it's a different brand. Okay, questions about chapter 7? Joseph, you look bored out of your mind. Or is that just a picture? You haven't blinked in like a week. Okay. All right, chapter 8, strategic alliances. Your book is an example of Disney and the Oriental Land Company, a cooperative arrangement in which 2 or more firms combine their resources and capabilities to create a new value. So Disney has all the characters, they had the brand, they had the designs, they have the management process, but they didn't have the money, they didn't have the land, and they didn't have financial resources to build the park, and they didn't have the relationships. They didn't know who the people were in Japan. They didn't know the culture. They didn't know the employees. They didn't know how to manage the human capital. So what they did is they did a strategic alliance, which made it great. Disney said, hey, we got all this great stuff that your people love. You know all your people, what they want and how to do it. So let's get together and build it. And they did. So how to choose whether an alliance, make, buy, or create an alliance. So make means no need to ally or buy. Buy, no need to make or ally, and ally can't make or buy. Okay, so those are the reasons for the different strategic alliances. So inputs such as nuts and bolts, buns, and hot dogs, other condiments and supplies. So they make they have 7 hot dogs in a package and 8 buns, right? So I don't know. I guess they're not strategically aligning those 2 things. Okay. Your book calls these arm length relationships. These are commonly in all types of industries. Okay, so everything from contracts to peanut butter and jelly, basically. Okay, so strategic alliance partnerships, inputs that can differentiate your product in the minds of the customers. Automakers do this a lot, inputs that influence your brand or reputation. Volvo has a reputation of being a safe auto. High value inputs or activities that make up a high percentage of your total cost. Steel in the auto industry is an example of this. And inputs or activities that require significant coordination in order to achieve the desired fit, quality, and performance. Car manufacturers and companies that manufacture AC units. So this is why you'll typically see an AC unit being manufactured or owned by the company, the car company. Okay, contractual or non-equity alliances, 2 different or more firms write a contract to govern their relationships. Contract specifies what each party is to do in the alliance, what each party should receive if it fulfills its duty in the alliance. Okay, so contracts not only tell you what you should do in the beginning, but it should tell you what to do when you're done. So most people don't understand this, especially in partnerships. You have an exit strategy. Okay, so Disney is promoting a new movie and characters. Disney forms an alliance with McDonald's to put characters in the Happy Meals. So somebody builds them, Disney contracts that out for these products to be built, and then Disney signs a contract with McDonald's and they put them in their Happy Meals for however long. Okay, so we have types of strategic alliances: contractual alliance, equity alliance, and a joint venture. Your book goes into explanation of all these. Okay, so for example, my company, we have a dealership with HP. We're an authorized HP dealer. So in order to do that, I have to sign a contract with HP saying, I'm not going to use your HP logo or brand for other things than for your product. And part of our agreement is I can only buy HP supplies through authorized vendors. So I have to buy through them, through their distribution agreements that use only HP products. So somebody who is not HP authorized cannot buy HP toners from these particular authorized vendors. Okay, so that would be a strategic alliance that I have with Hewlett Packard. That would be an example. Equity alliance, the collaboration between firms often supplement contracts with equity holding alliances. A financial stake in the other company, Toyota, owns anywhere between 5 and 49% of all the equity companies that it does, and the 10 largest Japanese suppliers, who all work very closely with Toyota in the development and production of its automobiles. So the strategic equity alliance for Toyota is to buy in equity into the companies that they do business with. Okay, joint ventures, Google and NASA. This is a perfect example of a joint venture creating a new product. Cooperating firms combine resources to form an independent firm in which they invest. Profit from the independent firm compensate partners for their investment. So through their contracts and how they work together, they will say, well, Google's going to get this much profit, NASA's going to get this much profit. So NASA and Google sign a memorandum of understanding that outlines plans for the cooperation of a variety of areas, including large-scale data management, massive distributed computing, bioinfo nano, convergence, and encouragement of the entrepreneur space industry. So their contract is very extensive, how they're entering into the contract, how they're going to perform, and then when it's time to close a relationship, how they're going to exit the relationship. Okay, the difference between vertical and horizontal alliances. I know it's a lot of information. Let's try and stay awake just a little bit longer. We're almost done, I promise. Vertical alliance is an alliance between firms who are positioned at very different stages, along with value chain, such as supplier and buyer. And then horizontal alliance is an alliance between two firms that do not have a supplier-buyer relationship and are typically positioned at a common stage of the value chain. They're competitors. Okay. So, for example, your ceramics company that you guys are doing, you're not only competitors with the airline industry that you're making these blades for, you can't sell to them. You can't sell to your competitors. So you're not going to be able to create a relationship like that. Vertical alliances, Toyota's relationships with the top 10 suppliers are considered vertical alliances. The output of one of the firms in the relationship is the input of the other. So vertical alliances are usually formed to combine unique resources, create new alliances, specific resources, or lower transaction costs between two companies. Okay, so there's a particular reason, usually money is involved for resources and for vertical alliances. JIT partnership with Bose, how they partnered alliances. This is from your book. So traditional process and GIT partnership process. So during the process, there actually can create advantages and disadvantages. We'll get in more into detail about them when we talk about Mercedes-Benz and Daimler. So the merger between Daimler-Benz and Chrysler, 1995 to 2007, intended to strengthen earning power of the group. Intention of the merger was to safeguard the long-term competitiveness of the companies. So for example, Mercedes-Benz, up until then, there was no soccer mom van, there was no SUV, not much of one anyway. So what they did is they took from Chrysler how to make a minivan, how to make a SUV, and they incorporated that into the Mercedes-Benz division of their plant. And then Chrysler, like I explained before, my Jeep got all kinds of Mercedes-Benz upgrades when they put all of the information or all that technology into the General Motor or into the Chrysler cars. And then another value chain example. Look at that. I got them everywhere. Okay, so the Mercedes-Benz and the Chrysler both prospered in the value chain. Everything from combining their resources into the raw materials, into purchasing and manufacturing, all the way through the primary and secondaries. Okay. So now we're getting into international strategy. There's two types: multi-domestic strategy, the differentiation approach, adaptation, and product services customized in each country, decentralized, federation of national organizations, local decision-making, effective when differences between countries are large, and source of advantage information, local responsiveness, minimize political and exchange rate risks. So remember we talked a lot about this. Coca-Cola and Pepsi are always competing for this domestic type strategy when they're doing global expansion. Sometimes Pepsi's more suited to go into different markets, like in the Asian markets. Pepsi's better in the South American markets. Coca-Cola is a little bit better. Okay. So global strategy, cost, aggregation, product service centered worldwide. So sometimes manufacturing these things in the areas where they are is better in a global strategy. Okay, effective when differences between countries are small. Source of advantage, cost, ability to coordinate activities, speed in new production and development. Okay, so those are the two basic differences between multi-domestic strategy and a global strategy. Okay, so a multi-domestic strategy, you're going to look at one is a holding company. So the holding company has the headquarters where it does R&D and all this other good stuff, and it branches out. And the strategy is to differentiate in local markets, drawing on worldwide resources. So Philips is a perfect example of this, and your book elaborates a little bit more about that. So tailor products to national idiosyncrasies, sacrifice efficiency and market focus, reach economies of scale upstream, and maximize local value added. So for example, Coca-Cola tailors their taste of their product to the national idiosyncrasies. So the same taste in India is going to be different from a taste from South America, as opposed to the Pacific Islands, where they like them super sweet, and in South America they like it semi-sweet, and then in the Arabic countries they don't like it sweet at all. Okay, so global strategy is a little bit different. You have a headquarters, but then you have many headquarters all around the country, or all around the world, I'm sorry. So gain global market share, cost leadership, policies, world products build volume, and global products rollout. Okay, so each country is going to have its own type of headquarters, or each area or district. So they'll optimize global network at local expense. Okay, so you might have one where India, Asia, Western Europe are maybe grouped into one category as opposed to another group. Okay, and then those might be subgrouped depending on what the what they're selling and what their product is and how the market reacts. Ways to create value in alliances. You combine unique resources, what Daimler Chrysler did, pool similar resources, create new alliances, specific resources, lower transaction costs, built-in trust. So lowering transaction cost is obviously what Toyota does when it comes to investing in its companies that supply its items. Okay, so the 3 C's, we went over this. Carfu, we're not going to have time for this. Ways to create value in alliances. The first way the firm creates value through an alliance is by combining unique resources to create even more powerful offering. For example, Pixar and Disney took both of their resources, combined them together to make some great movies, right? So the way they pulled similar resources, the Oriental Land Company and Disney, Disney brand, land for the park. We went over this, relationship with the construction firm, and Disney consumer products to sell at the park. Okay, lower transaction costs, build trust. Toyota General Motors found that Toyota's procurement and legal costs were half those of GM's. GM's tried to copy them, and no matter what they did, they couldn't do as well as Toyota did. Because Toyota just doesn't do this once, they do it many times over in their value chain. Okay, study concluded that General Motors and its suppliers had a higher transaction cost because they didn't trust each other. So they ended up suing all the companies they do business with. So, and Toyota didn't have to sue them because essentially they would be suing themselves. If they take legal action against one of their companies, all they're going to do is waste their own money. Okay, so risk of alliance holdup when one partner tries to exploit the alliance specific investment made by another partner. Misrepresentation when one partner is in alliance creates false expectation about the resource it brings to the relationship or fails to deliver what it's originally going to promise. So a lot of times companies will misrepresent themselves when creating a strategic alliance, and that'll be another risk. So building trust. I did a business with Laser Imaging Plus, a company that did remanufacturing cartridges. It turns out that the key personnel in the company weren't happy with their boss. I had no control over this. So what they ended up doing is stealing my customers and going out on their own. So that can be an example of the risk of alliances that you have. So losing business directly. Okay, so legal contracts is another risk. Okay, most contracts have clauses that clarify 3 categories of issues: governance of issue, operating issue, and exit and termination issue. And a word of advice, if you are ever going to go into business for yourself, do it without a partner. And if you have to have a partner, and that's the only reason you need a partner, is because there's something they bring to the table that you can't, always have an exit or termination strategy. It doesn't matter if you leave on good terms. It doesn't matter if you leave on bad terms. Always have an exit strategy, because the last thing you want to do is have your partner die and then you're in business with his family. Believe me, it's not a good thing. Okay, building and alliance management capabilities. I took this from your book. So figure 8.2, you can review that. Choosing between alliances and acquisitions. How you're going to choose between alliance, joint ventures, and acquisition, depending on what capabilities and resources that you can bring to the party, as opposed to what you need to be successful, whether you have to do a joint venture or an acquisition. Okay, so number 1 reason why partnerships break up: governance issues, operating issues, and exit termination issues. And basically it all comes down to communications. Why do people break up? It's all because they don't say how they feel about each other. Nope, not going to do that one. Not going to do that one. These are all exercises. Oh, this is what you do when you mine for the batteries, for the electronic batteries. This is how they rape the earth, just to let you know. This is a pollution caused by making electricity with coal. Killing all the salmon in the Columbia River. All the fires caused by exploding wind turbines. And solar power is not effectively as you think. So Monday, multi-quiz paper, like every Monday. And then Friday, the Samsung case. And we wrapped up 2 chapters. Woohoo! So what questions do you have for me? Anyone? Anyone?
What are some examples of like the exit/termination strategy?
Well, examples are if, for example, say that you go into business with a company to make a certain product for a certain amount of time. So say you're going to make the air conditioning units with this company for the Humvee vehicle, which they stopped production of. So you say, okay, we write into contract, this is how we're going to split the profits, this is how we're going to do this is how we're going to do this until we stop manufacturing or this car becomes obsolete. And then at that time, we're going to take these resources back, you're going to take those resources back, and then we're going to split whatever we have in escrow and down the middle 50-50. That would be your exit strategy. So in a partnership, if you decide, hey, you and your friend are going to go open a sandwich shop, you say, okay, I'm putting $50,000 in, you're putting $50,000 in, we're buying all the equipment together. But if we, for some reason, our sandwich shop doesn't work out, we're going to sell everything we can and then split the cash. And then we'll go on our merry ways. That answer your question, Carlos? All right. Other questions?